Climbing can be tricky at the best of times. When a climb looks like this, real tech, real steep and, well, pretty daunting, then it doesn't inspire much courage to get up it, right? Well, don't worry, today I'm gonna break down this exact climb behind me on how I would get up it, the kind of steps I'd use, the techniques, and the processes to hopefully get you climbing better back home. Walk with me then, everyone. This climb here, it's a very small, short little climb, but it's steep. It's really tall. That's got to be 4 or 5 meters tall, which doesn't seem that much in the grand scheme of things, but look at the terrain you've got to go over. That is what makes this particular little climb much harder. And the skills and the techniques that we're going to look at on this climb can be transferred onto little punchy sections, maybe just the first beginning of this, or much longer as well. But we're going to try and tackle this climb in its entirety. So we're going to start off with line choice. This section of trail then, as far as I can tell, I've been giving it the eye for a little bit now, there's 2 clear lines. There's riders far left and riders far right. You ain't going to be coming up the middle because you've got these massive boulders in the way. Both lines, well, one's a much further way round on riders left there. It goes the long way round and skips out this annoying step at the beginning. Riders right, however, is the most direct and straightest, but you do have this step here, which we'll get to in a bit, to sort of negotiate. It's going to kill some speed, whereas you can get some more pedal strokes in around the outside. I think we're going to try both today, and we're going to compare and see how they go. Let's do riders left to begin with and break that down, then we'll try riders right. Okay, that was first attempt at both lines done. And we nearly cleaned it almost on the first attempt. But where did I go wrong? Riders left then. You see it's smooth around the outside here. It's actually easier to carry your momentum up the climb. You do have a bit of a rock to possibly thread it through at the beginning, or maybe you might just bump over it a touch. But it means you can carry more speed here, but this is where it gets then tricky, because it's a bit steppy. So if you're losing momentum, if you're not keeping that speed, which is going to be crucial to get up this climb, and a lot of climbs sadly, then you're going to have to keep that speed up to here. I do think this might end up being the easier of the 2 lines. Once you get it here, that's when you're going to have to perform a bit of trials hopping. So let's talk about that. These steps here then, these are the crux of the climb. These steps here and the step at the beginning of rider's right-hand line are where it's going to be make or break whether you get it up or not. So what's going to happen is you're going to keep your speed. You're going to be able to bump up these first 2, sort of up here, but it's going to be here where the momentum is going to be slowing down. Is at this point you're going to have to start bunny hopping and shifting your body weight. So you're going to have to get to here. As your front wheel gets up, you're then going to have to hop and hop. That way you're going to be able to make it up the steps. Just trying to plow through them isn't going to work. And it's the same with down there. If I just sort of plow into that, I'm not going to get through it nice and clean yet. I'm going to lose momentum, where it definitely gets steeper on that right-hand side. So let's jump over to the right-hand side. So here's that step I was talking about at the beginning of this little section. So you've got to hop up there to begin with. So you're going to hop up there into an uphill. Now you're going to need a lot of momentum to then be able to carry on here. That is very steep there. This is the steeper side. Like I said, it's more direct, but steepest. So once you've initiated that hop, so you're going to come in, unload your weight, pop up, and essentially when you then compress again into the bike, as you start to decompress to go up, that's when you're going to get your pedal strokes in. You're going to come up, and this is where it's all going to make or break. This little section here, because it's so steep. Once you can get your back wheel over this knobbly bit here, I think you're home and dry then, but it's going to be getting to that point that's going to be the hardest. So let's do a slow-mo and have a look at the technique I'm going to use to get through it and then break it down. So the first technique I used then was the pre-hop. So down here, as I'm coming in, I'm keeping a good pace, and a good pace, like I said, is key on this climb. I'm coming in, I'm hopping, I'm compressing into the bike here, hopping up, so picking the front wheel up and over this, and that's unweighting the rear. So the rear is going to sort of just either glide over or hop up here. That puts the bike here. When I get to this point, I'm compressing down into the bike, you'll notice, and then as I compress, I shift my body weight forwards and I'm putting gas down on the pedals. Now the crucial part here is that you're not too far over the front. If you get too far over the front, you're not going to have enough traction on the back. you're not gonna have enough grip because it's unweighted. So there's a fine line between having it over the front, to obviously not loop out and go backwards, but rear enough, sort of almost central on the bike, I would say, that the back wheel is gonna get grip when you get the power down. And it's at that point then that I then start to stomp on the pedals, get the power down, get the front wheel lifted up over this next section. And all this time I'm still looking nice and far ahead. And you always need to be looking ahead because the exit of this is so narrow, you can easily catch a pedal either side of here. And once you get to this point, keep going, you're home and dry. What about gearing though? Gearing's a really tricky one when it comes to steep climbing because you need to be in a gear that's easy enough to get you up the climb. But if it's something techers like this, you can't come into this in second or third gear, say, because you're not going to be able to spin fast enough and keep the momentum to get up there. So while second and third might work for you there, you're losing everything coming into the climb here. So back this way again. I'm approaching this. I started off in fifth gear actually, and I was coming into it, but I found, if we're going back and forth, you're gonna have to bear with me, it's not tennis. I found whilst I was trying to change it up to an easier gear here, that actually I was then having sort of just crunching through the gears, and you really want to avoid that. You don't really want to be changing gear, especially on here when you're under lots of load. You want to get that all done before in this section here. So what I'm doing, come back again. I found a happy place, fourth gear here, and I was spinning, basically maxing out a cadence, fourth gear, fourth gear, fourth gear. Switched it to third just before I did my lunge, and I found that third gear for my old legs here was enough to get me up there. Now, every climb is different, has different characteristics, so playing around with the gears is what works. But top tip is, don't change gear under load. If I was to smash up here in fourth and then try to shift into third gear here, well, all manner of bad things is going to happen to my drivetrain, and it's going to hate me. And Pistol Pete, the mechanic, is not going to be impressed. That's the right-hand side done. We've got up there. I've broken down a few of the techniques where I shifted my body weight around, where I did a bunny hop, and where I pedaled, because all those things combined, well, basically are what allowed me to get up that hill. It's using a combination of those skills. So remember that when you're tackling your next climb, that it's not just one skill and it's not just pure power, it's combining all these things at the right times to get up something. So that's the right done. Let's move on to the left. Oh. What went wrong there? Lack of momentum, went offline, front wheeler sunk into that hole. And with that, nearly catapulted me forwards. Basically, that stopped me dead. I came too far right. I should have stayed left a little bit more. That's how crucial line choice is to making it up or not. Pedal, pedal, third gear. Oh, we've lost a bit of momentum. I've gone wide. Oh, close. The problem with that one wasn't line choice, that was momentum. I came in, slipped on the gravel a bit, didn't get a smooth gear change. And again, that's all she wrote. So that is the problem actually, with that rider's left down there, because you've got to turn into it more, it does make things a little bit trickier. So that's where the line choice comes into play. Third time's a charm. Pedal, 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 third gear. Oh! We got it, that one wasn't the prettiest. Brute force came into play, but what you could see I was still doing was timing the pedal strokes as well. In between the steps, I was still catching a pedal a little bit here and there, but I was aiming for certain rocks as well. So let me show you. So this side then is a little bit more straightforward in some ways and trickier in others. You've got to turn into it, as I said, so that makes it hard to get your pedal strokes in and keep your momentum. But this part here, look, round the outside is nice and smooth. It's when you start to turn right that it gets a little trickier. Now we've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in a row here. Now what you can see on that last attempt I did was I pedaled up it, but I'm using a variation of that hopping technique. So instead of hopping up each one, like a complete proper hop, I'm more unweighting. Because they're not quite as big and they're more spaced out, the bike fits between them better. I'm coming up, I'm hopping, I compress in here, and this is where your timing needs to come in. As you decompress, that's when I put my pedal stroke in. If I was to try and pedal mid-compression, the bike's at its lowest point, your cranks are 100% gonna strike every single time on the knuckle of these steps. So you'll just compress, pedal, compress, pedal. So on that sort of way back up is when you're getting your pedal in. So it's here, as I come up, pedal and pedal. And that way, you make it up the climb. I'm also, like I said, aiming for certain rocks. So Remember on that previous attempt where I got to about here and my front wheel got wedged? Well, that's because I made the step bigger for myself. What I'm actually looking to do, when I come up this kind of way, I'm actually looking for stones in between the bigger rocks, which helps smooth out or bring that step out. My wheel isn't going to sit as low into it. It's going to come off of here rather than being a couple inches lower. So it makes the step a lot less. Where should your saddle be when climbing Tekker's climbs? That is a question I do get asked a lot. On this particular climb, down. You want it down, you want it out the way. That way you can hop and maneuver and move the bike really easily without any kind of your legs bashing against the saddle. You know, it's not going to impede you in any way. However, on certain sort of prolonged, steeper, more pedally climbs where there's less kind of hopping and trials, maneuvers involved, then you want your saddle more up. Not necessarily all the way sometimes. A top tip here, or a trick if you like, is what I'll do on certain climbs is I'll drop my saddle maybe halfway, or I'll drop it a third of the way down. That way it allows me to sort of sit a little lower in the bike, sit a little bit further back, a little bit more weight on that back wheel for grip and traction. You'll see it's something you see e-bikers, especially the guys racing the EEDR, do a lot on those power stages, and it's something that mountain bikers on analog bikes do as well. And that just allows you, like I said, to get that little bit more grip, but it's not, you know, it's not all the way down. If you try and pedal with your saddle all the way down, we all know it's really painful, really uncomfortable on the knees, and it's not very efficient. But just dropping that ever so slightly amount, it's still going to allow you to pedal pretty well, but it's going to give you more grip through the rear tyre. Suspension for this ideally wants to be unlocked. Now, if you look at a lot of cross-country bikes, they've got a lockout on them, and those riders, when they're powering up those long, smooth, steep hills, they will lock the shock out. It'll be more efficient. You're getting more power through it. However, on this kind of stuff, with that shock open, or working if you like, it's going to allow the bike to sort of sit into the bumps. It's going to give it more traction. It's going to give it more compression and weight on the back end, allowing for a much better drive. Much like I sort of would say having your seat down, you get more weight into the saddle, more weight into the back end. You know, that the suspension is going to stay front and rear for that. It's going to compress, it's going to put more force through the tyres, and it's going to give you better grip the whole way through the climb. Just to expand on the pedaling aspect a little bit more, I know I've talked about when you time that pedals, where you pedal. The type of pedal I'm using is a clipless pedal. So for a Tekker's climb, I think this is actually better because it essentially allows you to push as you would on any pedal, but you've got more power on the pull as well. And it does give you a little bit more control. When it gets really bumpy like this, I can focus just on the pedaling without worries of my feet jumping off or skipping around like they would, or potentially would, on flats. However, that's not to say that you can't do it on flats. Loads of people are really good climbers on flats. I just feel like on a climb like this, a clipless pedal does actually help because it allows you to just focus purely on the climb, and it gives you, like I said, that pull timed with that push, so you can really get the power down the entire time. So that is both sides of this techie little climb conquered. Now, on that last one I actually did, you've got to be really sort of open to sudden changes, should we say, and I think that's always going to be the case with tricky climbs. Sudden changes in line choice, your front wheel might get pinged off course of where you want it to be slightly, so you've really got to be mindful that you have to shift your body weight around a lot. You know, 1 minute you might be sort of weight back, then I sort of almost struggled to make it up a step, so I had to lunge my weight forward to get that back end up over a step and time that pedal stroke. You've really got to be alert of what's going on underneath you and what's coming up to be able to make it up a climb consistently every time. But there we go. Oh, I'm pooped. That's a lot of climbing, and last but not least, don't be afraid to fail. I did not get up either of these climbs first time. There ain't no shame in that. Climbs are tricky. It took me quite a few goes on some of this stuff, let me tell you. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to have a go. Keep at it. Work on those techniques of pre-hopping, timing your pedal strokes, shifting your body weight, and I guarantee you'll get up climbs more consistently. But for me, from Arizona, I'll see you later.